We are, of course, facing an economy battered by a number of issues, including the pandemic, unrest, as well as the recent floods that have hit KwaZulu-Natal that indicate, by all means, that will have a broader impact on the economy of the country. Is the nation accelerating its digital transformation to meet the needs of an economy that needs to recover from all these challenges? Here to talk to us about this is digital 4IR professor, I beg your pardon, of practice at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. Miriam Altman. Dr. Altman, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus.
Thanks for having me.
If we look at all the signals as far as the talk that we are having around moving to 4IR, it was something that really looked like it would gain momentum in the early days of the administration of President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're even talking of teaching kids coding at primary school and so on and so forth. That train seemed to have halted. Recently, we've seen, for example, the auctioning of spectrum. Yet again, many saying that went to the big players. Not much attention has been given to new entrants as far as them playing a part in the development of infrastructure. When you look at that overall picture, is South Africa accelerating its digital transformation initiatives to meet the challenges that we do need to meet if we are to recover even from the pandemic that we've just come from?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to reset a couple of things that you've just said, if I can just start there. There's no doubt that we need to move faster on digital transformation. There's absolutely no doubt. It's not always a clear path for most countries. Very few countries succeed in, developing countries succeed in having, everybody hooked up. Having said that, there are poor countries and lower income countries like Vietnam that have done very well in making sure that everybody is connected and even broadband in the home. But if I can just, in my mind, address some of the specific points that you've made. The first is that we have issued spectrum, and maybe I'm biased, but telecommunications is not an SME business. Digital business and what spectrum could give life to can bring forward many small businesses. But telecommunications is a scale infrastructure business. And so therefore, it is not surprising that the spectrum was issued to the major telecommunications players. That's probably how it should go. That is how it should go. Yeah. On the back of that, there are going to be a whole lot of commitments around it. The issue, the more important issues that arise around the spectrum release is firstly whether the spectrum is even available, which is what Telkom is having concerns with, because Telkom had wanted a certain portion of the spectrum that is still being used by broadcasters. And that's an example where we have gone very slow. That was meant to have been issued 2015 was meant to be the cutoff date. 2015 was meant to be the cutoff date 7 years ago. And around the world, every other country has done that other than us. Yeah. So that is an example, rather, of where one of the problem lies. Then around schooling, you were raising the point about coding, and funny enough, there actually is coding in the public school system. An NGO that I'm involved in fact, called Africa Teen Geeks, has developed curriculum with the Department of Basic Education to have coding in school down to grade 1. So actually, that particular thing has moved forward. Having said that, we need to get all the schools connected, and probably over the past decade or so, I think about 10 years ago, maybe 25% of schools were hooked up, and now maybe 30% have been hooked up. So it's still, we're still well short of where we need to be. And when I was a National Planning Commissioner, we put out work to show that it would actually be a very small job to connect all schools, that about 80% of schools are near some kind of a fiber line or LTE. Yeah. So we could be making more progress, and we have to. And one of the reasons for that we have to, is that increasingly communications will happen in what they call the cloud. It will be less and less paper-based and more cloud-based. And what that means is that everybody has to get online and be empowered and become e-savvy.
Yeah. And what is your understanding then of where we sit currently, for example, in our development of human resource, particularly as it comes to procurement within government? In other words, I mean, a simple question would be, are we at a point where we are moving, for example, our municipalities into a more efficient way of doing things via tech? And could tech possibly help our municipalities be more efficient?
So there's no doubt that digital technology could help. For example, Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication. What that means is you could be putting sensors into pipes, on buildings very easily to be monitoring for leaks and that kind of thing. You could be doing, when you don't have sufficient numbers of engineers, you could be doing remote repair, where repair is done by video, where you put your skilled staff in a headquarter, they don't travel around. And through video, you can have lower skill people or semi-skilled people who are repairing with high skill, via video, with high skill people weighing in on what they're doing. There's no doubt that digital technology could be helpful. When we talk about capability at a local level, however, there's little doubt that it's really the basics right now that have to be focused on. It means that the top municipal management around the city manager or CFO, there's certain basic capabilities that have to be in place if we want to see the rollout of basic infrastructure, maintenance of infrastructure, and ultimately smart cities is the kind of thing that you're raising. But there has to be a certain minimum capability and leadership. That is a requirement of COCTA. Yeah. In its Back to Basics program, but it hasn't been attended to. And again, that's definitely something, where we've got to pick up our socks, not just around digital, but generally around service delivery and maintenance.
As you mentioned, you were previously with the Planning Commission. In your view, are we setting the right objectives that will result in the right behavior that will take us in that direction that we want to go?
So not only, when I was a commissioner, my term ended in March 2021, and in late 2020 we issued a paper that reviews the set of issues. But subsequently, I became the lead author of the National Infrastructure Plan, and 3 weeks ago, Cabinet approved the first phase that looks at bulk infrastructure, and currently I'm leading the whole process of looking at what we call distributed infrastructure. So that would mean, if we were talking about digital, it would mean digital health, e-health, e-education, et cetera, and then also municipal electricity, housing, social infrastructure, passenger transport, that kind of thing. So now, in the National Infrastructure Plan that was approved March 11, and has been issued. So it is now a cabinet-approved document. It says, when you talk about setting the right behavior, we did quite a search to work out how we could be doing exactly that. So as an example, one of the recommendations says for capacity building in municipalities, it says there are non-designated municipalities that report to Treasury. We need to use Treasury-provided financial incentives to say the 10 most important municipalities to drive improved performance. So in other words, to use financial incentives, it would mean you would get more programmatic funding if you pick up your socks and can show that you're complying with the COCTA Back to Basics program, and that you are now improving your finances, improving delivery, improving maintenance. Your metrics are starting to improve. You're taking advantage of the capacity building programs, et cetera. Then you would get more programmatic funding. Yeah. And equally, if you weren't, your funding might actually get cut. We're going to be, government is going to be experimenting with that as of this financial year, as an example.
Now, you've already mentioned that Cork is the department that should be taking a lead role, particularly in this aspect. But further than that, who should be held accountable? I mean, is it the political heads that should be held accountable? Who should be held accountable for the implementation and ensuring that we are moving in the right direction?
Well, of course, there are different levels of accountability, and that is incredibly important. And, who's accountable ultimately is the president. And then if you're talking about water, it's the Minister of Water Affairs or the city manager, or, it depends what level and for what. Importantly, a very important recommendation in the National Infrastructure Plan that was approved was to have transparent reporting. Now, that's not available right now. So Infrastructure South Africa is now mandated to set up what's called open reporting around infrastructure. That would mean that we could be monitoring the projects that are in play, where they are in the phases, who's been awarded the tender, all of that kind of thing. And that should make a big difference to the ability of both within government and in civil society to drive accountability and performance.
Dr. Altman, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us this evening, helping us in that conversation there on the importance of digital transformation. For our Professor of Practice at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. Miriam Altman.